Namaste and welcome to this exciting episode of Sathology Debunking Mythology. Sathology means science of truth and mythology means opposite of truth. It comes from the root word Sat and the Sanskrit root word for mythology is myth. So why is that the Western Indologists and the people who follow Western Indologists, they just don't want to read Mahabharata? That's the biggest problem. If they want to comment on Mahabharata, learn Sanskrit, not the Max Muller way, learn Sanskrit in a tradition, read Mahabharata in a tradition, then I don't think so you'll have any confusion. And the secondly, why do you want to comment on Mahabharata when you have your own scriptures? Just focus on yours, Abrahamic faith. Why? Answer I can give you because you won't give me, it will become an argument. So answer I'll give you because there is nothing for you to comment on. What are you going to comment on? Either you will be killed or you will be hanged or whatever will happen. Anyway, a very, very special guest today. We have done many shows together. And since she has written Mahabharat Unraveled, now you got the hint already. And I have written 2 books on Mahabharat, 4 books on Mahabharat, but I don't write in one. So our discussions are always full of insightfulness. Okay. So without delay, let's welcome Amy Ganatra.
Thank you so much, Aditya ji. Happy to be here once again and looking forward to the chat today.
Amy, before we start off, there's a one usually they say एकलव्य के साथ बहुत पक्षपात हुआ. I'll put my reference, okay, my points on that, which is based on Samrat Yudhishthir, the greatest Samrat, which is a book which I wrote. Eklavya was son of actually a king, Nishad king. He was a Kshatriya. He learned it from a murti without taking a formal permission, and he learned it, and then he was asked his thumb by Dronacharya, and the Dronacharya, because had promised Arjun so that he is going to protect him to be the best archer. And secondly, there was the feeling in Dronacharya of misuse of training, and that it may happen without proper training. And then to compensate, he was very pleased with his following the request against the thumb. And then when he trained him in archery by fingers, where he became as accurate as before, but not as fast as before. That is a real story. Now, we will come later, whether you like it or not, or others like it or not. But we need to debunk the myth that Dronacharya was not nice to Eklavya, was not equal to Eklavya, or was in any way pakshapatful, like that, discriminated. So go ahead.
Um, so I agree with almost everything that you've said, Aditya ji. So yes, probably what Ekalavya did was not aligned with the way the actual way the way adhikar is obtained for learning any these kinds of things. He was refused by Dronacharya. So the one other myth, I think usually the myth associated is ek to pakshpat, that he was biased, but the other was he was biased because of Ekalavya's jati, because he was of what they usually say a choti jati, and that is why Dronacharya did not teach Ekalavya. So I think the jati question is not there at all, because as you said, he was a Nishad, but he was a Nishad prince. And we find many references throughout Mahabharata that Ekalavya comes for the Rajasuya Yagna as well. Ekalavya is a part of is allied with Jarasandha. And when Jarasandha was killed by Bhim, provoked by Krishna, so he was part of that group which attacked Dwarka to take revenge of Jarasandha. And Eklavya was actually killed by Krishna. So he was a warrior. He was very brave. Irrespective of whether he had the thumb or not, he continued to be an excellent warrior, and Krishna himself says that. And hence the caste part is not there at all. He was still a warrior and he continued to be one. The only place where I think I might slightly disagree with you is actually it's not even a disagreement. I think it's just a point of view. Um, I just feel that the punishment probably was a little harsh on Ekalavya if I think of it purely from a Ekalavya's point of view. To gain knowledge by saying that okay, I consider somebody my guru. He was not hiding and getting anything. He was doing his own practice, as I understand. He just had that murti and keeping that murti in mind, considering thinking of Dronacharya as a shishya. I don't think it was such a bad thing to do that Dronacharya should have taken his thumb away. So while I also understand why Dronacharya did what he did because he had made a commitment to Arjun. Arjun didn't say कि उसका आप thumb ले लो. Arjun was only surprised when he saw such a good warrior, such a good dhanurdhar rather, such a good archer, and he goes and tells Dronacharya that you promised to me that I will be the best. But it seems like some other student of yours, because Ekalavya had claimed that I am Dronacharya's student. So some other student of yours is actually better than me. So how did he become better than me? And the way it is given in Mahabharata is that Dronacharya thought for a moment and he said, "Chalo, you come with me." And he goes and tells Ekalavya that if you really consider me to be your guru, then you have to give, then will you give me the Guru Dakshina? And in the Guru Dakshina, he asks for this thumb. So my own take is that maybe it was a little harsh. Maybe it didn't matter too much in the long run because, as you very rightly said, Dronacharya also taught him to use to do archery with his two fingers. And this actually comes from the Southern Recession. You don't find this in Bhandarkar Oriental. Gita Press has it, but it refers from the Southern Recession. The Southern Recession says that Dronacharya was so happy and so pleased with Ekalavya's commitment and dedication and willingness to give the Guru Dakshina. That was his bhav, that he taught him with two fingers, which, as you again rightly said, did not take away his precision, but definitely his speed. So his speed decreased. So I think that's the only difference I have. Otherwise, I fully agree. And there was definitely no caste angle because that is what is usually imposed on this episode.
The word caste, you and I have said it, and many others have said it. Caste is a Portuguese word, casta.
Correct.
It has nothing to do with India. And
Nothing to do with
discrimination was not on the basis of his birth because Dronacharya was actually happy. He rewarded him. And
Absolutely.
till date, the Olympic archery is done with the fingers. Most of the people fight with the fingers. And till date. And it is considered more accurate because they are not in a warfare. They don't have to do fast. And not like the serials where they show us somebody. Because even to pull the bow is requires strength. 48 pounds is the minimum pull.
Yeah.
And you need 62 pounds and these people must be wearing much higher pound than this. Next is that he was able to stop the dog's barking, or he with his mouth with his arrows. This is what surprised all the five brothers, including Duryodhan
And the Kauravas.
and the
Yeah,
Kauravas
exactly.
also,
Yes.
including the Kauravas. And so, what was that incident which surprised them completely? And why did Eklavya had to show that?
Um, I think Ekalavya was not. He was practicing, right? Ekalavya was practicing his archery, and as I understand, the Kauravas and Pandavas had come there with the dog, and the dog started barking. So just to show how good he was, he just shut the mouth, or rather, he shot arrows at the mouth of the dog and kept it open. So this dog, of course, was in pain with his mouth open with all those arrows, and he goes back to where the Kauravas and Pandavas were. And that's what shocked them, that how was he so good that just he could keep the mouth of the dog open and shoot all these arrows. So that was that feat itself, if I only look at the feat, was quite something. It was precision and speed both that he could achieve that. That said, again, there is always an aspect of whether that was the right thing to do or not. Was the dog was doing its job? The dog barks, right? It was doing his job. So, was there a sense of ahankar, or was there a thing to show that, look, I'm so good that I can actually do something like this, just to show off without the dog really doing much else to him? So, there can be an aspect of that as well that he wants to show, but that's how I understand it. But anything else you want to add?
There is a shloka in the Gita press which actually says that Dronacharya was smiling at him and he was happy, pleased with him, with his thing. And I think one of the biggest qualities of a warrior is humility, vinamrata.
Yes.
and that was displayed by all the Pandavas. And even though I think they were they had just started their education under Dronacharya. This incident happened very early,
Yes.
and so Eklavya was bigger in age than them as well, because these people were 14 to 16 maybe, uh,
Correct.
uh, approximately, because
Arjun was
at
around 14, 15 at that time.
yeah,
Yes.
because the 14 was the age at which Bhishma
Yes.
put all these brothers. Arjun was 14 when he was put in under Dronacharya. So they were just beginning their education also. And Dronacharya had not given advanced weapon training to anyone because he did not know who was qualified to do that. So there was one aspect which Dronacharya really liked about Arjun was his sense of commitment. Like he would practice in the night
Yes.
when everyone was sleeping, and after this incident, he became even more serious that he had someone better. So what do you see Dronacharya's character in
Yes.
choosing his disciples right now?
Yeah. So actually, that is the most fascinating part I find of Dronacharya, because usually people say, oh, he was biased towards Arjun, or for that matter, they'll say everybody was biased towards Arjun, and hence they did not like Karna. But the thing is, why were people biased towards Arjun? Yeah, why was it that Dronacharya had so much love and affection for Arjun? It was not as if Arjun was a good-looking guy and suddenly Dronacharya had all these feelings for it. No, Dronacharya had tested Arjun at every point in during their training days. And it was Arjun's own commitment, his dedication, his skill, and his devotion towards Dronacharya, that Dronacharya became so impressed with him to commit to him that I will ensure that you become the greatest archer. I think the episodes we see actually they're very fascinating, even to understand Arjun's character. Dronacharya, of course, but also Arjun's character. So Arjun was impressed right from day one when Dronacharya comes and using the straws, he pulls out the ball from the well, in which it had fallen. Arjun was already very impressed that such an amazing feat could be pulled out by this person Dronacharya, who was not yet his teacher at that point. After that, Bhishma goes to Dronacharya and puts all these bachas to train under him. So even when the training is going on and they are learning and all of that, at some point, Dronacharya asks everybody. He says, I am teaching you all this, but at some point, I will make a request for a Guru Dakshina. Who of y'all will fulfill that request that I make? Now, every other person is thinking that, how do I commit without even knowing what the request is going to be? So none of them say anything. Everybody's chup, everybody's quiet. Arjun is the only one who says, oh, I will do as you tell me. Whatever you tell me, my Guru, I am ready to do that for you. And Dronacharya is obviously very pleased because this shows the devotion, the unquestioning, unconditional devotion Arjun has for Dronacharya, which nobody else had shown. So this was one test of the students, which Arjun qualified with flying colors, if we could say that. Then there were other occasions. So of course, Dronacharya had this thing that I'm teaching all these students, but my sons should also learn. So what he would do is that the kids had to do the daily chores, right? So like go fill water and stuff like that. So what he did is he gave a bigger vessel to Ashwathama and the smaller ones with smaller mouths to all the other students, so that Ashwathama would finish his work faster and become free. So then when he was free, Dronacharya could teach him additional skills at that time. Now Arjun realized that. And Arjun is like, I have to also learn. I cannot lose out on anything my Guru has to teach. So whatever my Guru has, I'm going to completely imbibe it in me, whatever he has. So he had started learning the weapons by that time, and he used a trick. He said, instead of going to the river and filling this vessels again and again, he used the Varunastra. And with the Varunastra itself, it is said that he could finish his work faster, and he would also go and sit with Dronacharya and learn everything that Dronacharya has to teach. So this was another thing. Dronacharya was extremely impressed with his devotion, dedication, not just towards Dronacharya, but towards the abhyas itself, the devotion that Arjun showed. Then there was one more. This time, what Dronacharya realized is that Arjun is very, very persistent. If he decides something, he wants to do it and he will do it at any cost. So he told his cook, he said, you never give Arjun food at night. when there is no light, ensure Arjuna, you don't give him food at that time. He should eat before that. So that was going on properly for some days. Then one day, what happened is that it was they were eating in the lamp. The lamps were flickering when they were eating food. And suddenly there was a storm and very strong gushes of wind, and the lamps went off. So when the lamps went off, Arjun, this just look at it, right? He was not the only one who was eating at that time. The Kauravas, the Pandavas, they were all eating. But in Arjun's mind, he's thinking that, see, there is no light right now. It is pitch dark. In spite of that, I can put my food into my mouth without, I don't need light. I don't need to see where my hand is going. Without that, my hand goes directly into my mouth without doing anything. So he realized that this is because of abhyas, this is because of practice. Which means if I keep practicing my Dhanur Vidya, if I keep practicing my archery, in dark, I will reach a stage where I will become so addicted that I don't need light. Even without light, I will be able to hit my target. And this kid, from that night onwards, starts practicing. When everybody else is asleep, our man Arjun starts practicing in the dark to get that kind of expertise to be able to shoot in the dark and hit the target with precision that he would do at light. This is another one. Then the very famous one we all know about the focus of Arjun. That to test them how good they were, the Dronacharya has this bird, stuffed bird, artificial bird set up between the branches of a tree. And everybody, he asks them, okay, what do you see? And everybody sees everything around the bird. Somebody sees the tree, the leaves, this, that. But when Arjun is asked, Arjun says, I see only the neck. I only see the head of the bird. And Dronacharya says, shoot, and he shoots directly, the head goes off. So again, the kind of focus which Arjun has. And there's one more which I must add, and I'll stop with that. The last one is this. Arjun, so there was a time when Dronacharya had gone into the river to bathe. And he suddenly screams because there's a crocodile, an alligator, who seems to bite Dronacharya's foot. And he screams, Dronacharya screams that help, bachao, bachao, to help me, for help. Every other student is scared that abhi kare kya? They are all in shock that how do they save their guru who's being bitten by an alligator, right? What do they do? Immediately, Arjun jumps, gets his bow and arrow, and just focusing on where the noise of the alligator is coming from. The alligator was underwater. He shoots and he kills the alligator. Now, in some versions, it is given as that this was a trick which Dronacharya had to test. In some others, it's shown as if it was a real situation. In any case, without a moment's thought, Arjun actually rescued Dronacharya, or at least passed that test. So one after the other, all these incidents made Dronacharya so committed towards Arjun, and Arjun became his favorite at every point after testing. It was not out of nowhere. And Dronacharya also was such a guru who knew exactly how good or how bad his students were and how much he could push. The other thing I would just say is, all the students, the Kauravas and Pandavas who learned under Dronacharya, they became the best at what they did. Arjun was good at everything, but the others, be it Duryodhan, be it Bhim, they were experts in whatever they achieved. So that clearly says something about the kind of guru he was in terms of warfare.
And Bhishma had selected him. He was in dire poverty, and Bhishma saw him, and Bhishma recognized him. So yes. Bhishma gave him the mandate to train all the Kuru Vansh princes. He did not say just the Pandavas. So no. He was equal to all of them. But coming back to Eklavya, because people make a lot of stories about Eklavya, especially those Indologists who have not read Mahabharata properly. And so they say Eklavya was a Dalit. A lot of controversy goes on. Eklavya was a very, his justice was denied to him. All the things which is connected to the wokeism, like the cancel culture, and and also the apologists, people who do not understand, they become apologists, and they start taking side of Eklavya. But Eklavya, like you and I we have already decided that he was a prince. He was a son of a king, Nishad king. Now he was part of Jarasandha's army, and later on Yudhishthir Maharaj also employed him in Rajasuya Yajna. He was a part of the Yudhishthir Abhishek, after the Rashtriya Yajna.
Participates in all those, yes.
So there was no discrimination shown by any of the Pandavas or even Kauravas on the basis of his birth. So please go ahead on debunking this
Yeah.
misinformation campaign.
So actually, Aditya, as I just said before, right, there is this big myth that it was because of his caste. Everybody will jump to the caste, and it's very interesting. In one of our discussions in my B school group, somebody made a comment saying that like Gurugram, Gurgaon is named Gurugram. Why? Because of Dronacharya. So that's where it comes from, and the Dronacharya Award for sports. So somebody took offense and they said, "Oh, this is not fair at all. We should not promote characters like Dronacharya because they promoted casteism in the Indian society. So they stand for caste politics. Why they stand for caste politics? Because Ekalavya." And I was like, okay, can you tell me where has Dronacharya said that I am not teaching Ekalavya because of his caste? Show me one incident. Okay. Second, so there is nothing like that. The shloka really says that Hiranyadhanu got his son. Hiranyadhanu was the Nishad king. He got his son Ekalavya and he asked Dronacharya to teach him. But Dronacharya the shloka says Tan Anaviksha. So basically, looking at his own existing students at that point, he says, no, I can't teach him. He doesn't give any reason for that. Okay. Now, if caste was a reason, as Aditya, you very rightly mentioned, if caste was that big a thing, then Jarasangh, why would Jarasangh be okay with, if caste was that big social construct or social issue at that time, why would Jarasangh ally with the Nishad king at all? One. Second, why would Yudhishthir invite him to his Rajsuya Yagna the way all other kings of Bharatvarsha were invited? It is very, very clearly said that Ekalavya got gifts and all that for Yudhishthir. That is also there, right? Third point, there were many Nishad kingdoms at that point.
And not only that, he was also distributing gifts. He was put in seva.
Yeah.
He was part of the reception team.
Correct. So, I mean, there was never this thing that, oh, he's a Nishad and hence can't deal with him or he's something lower than us or nothing, anything like that, right? That is not the case. Even when Krishna is telling Arjun about this incident, when Krishna kills Ekalavya or has to kill Ekalavya because Ekalavya along with Shalva and everybody else, they attack Dwarka. So at that time, Krishna himself kills Ekalavya. But when he's talking about it to Arjun, he says that you should be happy that I already killed Ekalavya because Ekalavya, even without his thumb, was a very, very indomitable warrior. And he tells he had to kill him because he attacked Dwarka, right? So there also Krishna is not telling Arjun that his jati was lower or his caste was lower and hence I killed him. So there even that part is not there. And the other thing that I was saying is that there were many Nishad kingdoms, one of which was Ekalavya's kingdom as well. Yeah. Now, during the war of during Dharma Yuddha of Kurukshetra, there were Nishads fighting on both sides. There were some on the side of Pandavas as well. There were some on the side of Kauravas as well. So again, if caste was such a big deal, would they get people like this to come and fight? Now, again, the fact that Ekalavya and his people could come and fight shows that they were also expert warriors, not just expert warriors, Nishads. So there are different kinds of people who could be called Nishad, but the Nishad category, which Ekalavya himself came from, they were also known to be expert weapon makers. They were very good at making weapons. And people actually looked up to them for buying those weapons. They were expert in that as well, and warriors, right? So really, just because Dronacharya refused to teach Ekalavya for whatever reason or took his thumb, again, for reasons apart from caste, there is no point to make it a caste issue. I think it's just a usual, like how they make Karna a caste, anti-caste hero nowadays, they've made Ekalavya into one. But clearly there is no case for it when we look at Mahabharata.
Now, coming back to Ekalavya, one more misconception is that you mentioned about his birth is not relevant. And first of all, we need to use the word Varna more than the caste, because Varna means it's based on occupation and qualities. Now, another misconception about him is that the Pandavas or Dronacharya, when he took away his thumb, he refused the right of Ekalavya to study further. And again, if you look at the personality of Dronacharya, is purely by qualification. And Dronacharya is a professional teacher. He takes
Correct.
money. That was his pact with Bhishma, because he had seen so much poverty, and his goal was to defeat Drupad
Drupad.
as a Guru
Right.
Dakshina. And he could not defeat them without money, because he wanted his 50% kingdom back. So he was not discriminative against anyone, but he was more favorable towards his son, Ashwatthama, even though he knew that he's not fully qualified to receive the advanced weapons training. Another thing is, like the Indian government, and I'm combining two questions here. Dronacharya award is for sports, but Dronacharya was a teacher of warfare, not
Warfare.
not of sports. Okay, so it's a
Yeah.
completely different award they are giving. Uh, so comment on both of them, please.
Yeah. So about I mean, how did Dronacharya happen to come to? How did he come to Hastinapur in the first place, right? So the story goes that Dronacharya and Drupad studied together in the ashram of Agnivesh. So Dronacharya is actually considered to be the student, his own father, Bharadwaj Rishi, as well as Rishi Agnivesh and Rishi Parshuram. So he had gone and learned some weapons from Parshuram as well. So, anyways, in the ashram of Rishi Agnivesh, Drupad and Dronacharya meet. Young kids, they become good friends. And at that point, Drupad had told Dronacharya at that time that you and I are such good friends that once I become the king of my kingdom, which is Panchal, you come to me and we will share all the luxuries that I have. You will never have a problem. Now, of course, Dronacharya doesn't go at that time, and then life gets tough. He becomes poor for whatever reason. So poor that his son does not even have milk to drink. It is said that the mother would, because Ashwathama would cry for milk, his mother would take flour, atta, and mix it with water and give it to Dronacharya. They were that poor. So seeing his son so upset, I mean, going through such poverty, Dronacharya goes to Drupad and tells Drupad and he basically is very happy that he's going to meet his friend. So he goes to meet his friend and he says, "Oh, you remember we were friends." Now, when Dronacharya says they are friends, Drupad, who is now a king, and he sees this poor Brahman who's come to get something from him, he said, "Look, don't call me your friend. Friendship is between equals. You and I are not equal. If you want something, if you've come as a seeker, if you've come as somebody who wants dakshina or bhiksha, then I will give you bhiksha. I can feed you food. But don't come as if you are my equal and my friend, because friendship can never be amongst rich and poor or people who are so different. Only elites can be friends of elites." So this is something Drupad has in mind. So that time Dronacharya is very, very sad. All he wanted was a cow so that his son could have a good meal, nothing else. But because he was insulted so much by Drupad, who was once upon a time his friend, and for no fault of Dronacharya at all at that point in time, Dronacharya says, "Fine, I will teach you a lesson." Because at the end of the day, I have certain skills. I'm a teacher and I need to humble you. So I will do that. And then, looking for good prospects, he comes to Hastinapur. And why does he come to Hastinapur? Because his um, Kripacharya, so his wife is Kripi. Dronacharya's wife is Kripi, and Kripi is the sister of Kripacharya, who is the Kulguru of Hastinapur at that time. So he comes there, and then Kripacharya also says that this guy is really good. But even before that, Dronacharya proves himself. He sees that when he comes to Hastinapur, he sees the boys playing, the Kauravas and Pandavas, they were playing, and the ball fell into the well. So now they're thinking what to do, how to get that ball out. So Dronacharya does something. You're just using those arrows and those grass, the hay sticks. He pulls the ball out. And now when he pulls the ball out that way, all the princes are dumbstruck. They're like, "Oh my God, how did this happen?" And then that's how Bhishma comes to know. And Bhishma then goes to Dronacharya and says, "Okay, now you stay here. I give you what you want. So you take salary, whatever. I give you what you want, and you teach the kids. You teach the princes. You stay here and you teach the princes." So that is how the arrangement is done between Dronacharya and the others. So after this happens, after all the learning happens, and the kids turn out to be the best masters of all that they are in all kinds of warfare, Dronacharya has this Guru Dakshana to ask, where he says that go and capture Drupad. Because all he wants is he wants to humble Drupad and take away half of his kingdom. So then he first Kauravas go, but they cannot do anything. So then the five Pandavas, they go and fight and they humble Drupad and they capture Drupad. So basically, all Dronacharya says is fine. Now we are equal. You told me, right, that you and I are not equal and we can't be friends. But now I take half of your kingdom and give you half. So now we are equals, and now I let you go. So that was the only thing he wanted to do. He wanted to humble Drupad at that time. Anyway, so this was when Drupad first time saw Arjun, and eventually in Drupad's mind, he wants to marry his daughter to Arjun. But anyway, so this is a story of Dronacharya himself. So he had himself actually suffered humiliation, not so much for his jati or varna or anything, but just because of lack of money that he had at that point in time. So he was himself a subject of humiliation, and hence to say that, I mean, but even there is no caste angle. I mean, the caste varna angle anywhere. So hence the whole Ekalavya and caste thing, it just doesn't gel. Yeah. So I don't think there is anything to even explain more in the Ekalavya part, so to say. As far as the other question of yours goes, so yes, Dronacharya actually deserve an award in warfare. Any of the gallantry awards could probably called Dronacharya award because he was the best amongst the best. But then even the Arjuna award is given for sports. Even that's a Khel Ratna award. So what do you say now?
I mean, complete lack of information on like whosoever is deciding the names. We don't know who is deciding the names, but this is going on. So coming back to this, Sanjay. Now Sanjay is also not belonging to Varna. Like his occupation is, he's a disciple of Vyasdev though, so he's a very educated person. But he is chosen to be the chief advisor of Dhritarashtra, who is the reigning king. He's the king. So again, the caste angle is not there. Varna angle is not there.
Vidur, his mother is a Shudra. Right. So, I mean, the caste angle is just, that's what I always tell people when they talk about this. I'm like, probably our ancestors were a lot more broad-minded. The society was a lot more fluid than what you probably see today. Yeah, even today, a lot of it is narrative. But still, if I even buy that. So we are trying to, when we read Mahabharata, or rather, even without reading, we are trying to project our present on our past. That's actually completely that is completely not founded on any basis. In fact, we need to learn from our past and see what we were rather than imposing on ourselves that we were always Jativadi and this and that, what the Firangs want to tell us, what the colonialists want to tell us.
No, actually, all these problems are coming from Max Muller and also the established narrative to show Sanatan Dharma down in the Western universities. It's a very established narrative, and we are speaking in English so that they can also understand what we are talking, and our people can also understand. And some of you also want me to talk in Hindi on this one. We'll do it another show for that one. And there we can talk. I speak Hindi and Marathi fluently. So we can talk some other
Marathi also fluently, is it?
Yes.
Nice.
So we can talk on some other show on that one. So coming back to Duryodhan, the Dronacharya and Eklavya. When Eklavya did fight in the Mahabharata war, he did fight in the Mahabharata war. And people say that he is glorified in his fighting also. There's one shloka I read where he was fighting very, very strongly. So, but still people come up with the notion that if he was not chosen as a warrior, he would not be allowed to fight in that war. Number one. So his birth was again not a consideration there. So his focus was on his expertise by Duryodhan, how it is being used. And people glorify Duryodhan for giving him a chance. Now, here you have to analyze Duryodhan again. Because why is he giving someone a chance who is a sworn enemy of the Pandav brothers? And so again, the jealousy part comes in on the part of Duryodhan, not on the part of Eklavya. Eklavya is just being employed in the battle. And nobody can be employed in battle unless they are part of the warrior class.
Correct.
So what is your view on these things?
So, as I was mentioning, Aditi, I think there is a little bit of confusion because sometimes even in Mahabharata this happens. Whether Ekalavya was a part of the Mahabharat, the Dharma Kurukshetra war, is what I'm not sure. However, Nishads were definitely a part of the Kurukshetra war, because this war in Dwarka that happened, where Shalva and everybody had attacked and Ekalavya was killed, I think that preceded the Mahabharat war, in which Krishna says that he killed Ekalavya. So there is a little bit of confusion over there. But that apart, the question is still valid, and I'll tell you why. As I was mentioning, that Nishads as a group, as a community, were warriors. They were expert weapon makers. Yeah. So these two things we have to keep in mind. And there was not one Nishad kingdom. There were many Nishad kingdoms in Bharatvarsha at that time. And there were some Nishads who fought on the side of Duryodhan. There were some kingdoms which fought on the side of Arjun, on the side of Pandavas as well, wherever their allegiance was at that point in time. Now, which basically also tells me that nobody really cared that, oh, he's this jati or that jati. They were all warriors, and all the warriors who could fight were a part of that yuddha. It was not because Duryodhan had this change of heart and he was equal and he used to think everybody is equal, hence I will employ Nishads. No, no, no. He employed Nishads because they were good warriors. Other side employed Nishads also because they were good warriors. Now, if they are good warriors, that means they are learning. Somebody is teaching them, right? So you mentioned one point before, that Dronacharya told no to Ekalavya, but that did not take away his right to learn, which is very true. Because, okay, forget Ekalavya. What about the other Nishads? Somebody was teaching them, right? They were learning. They were expert warriors. They were all aligned with Jarasandha. So when Ekalavya also went to fight Krishna, and Krishna killed him when he attacked Dwarka, Ekalavya was not the only Nishad fighting. There were many others who were a part of that army, right? Ekalavya's son. So I think Ekalavya's son participated in the Kurukshetra war on the side of Duryodhana. I think that's how it is. But anyways, the point you are trying to make, and I completely agree with it, is that it is nothing to do with jati. Nishads were warriors, were adept warriors, adept weapon makers as well. So there is really no point to make it a caste thing. Or if because Duryodhan fought with him, so the Duryodhan doesn't become great or ungreat for having them. It was just the skill which the Nishads brought to table.
No, you are absolutely right. Shalva incident when Shalva attacked with the plane on Dwarka happened before the Mahabharat war, and that's why Krishna was not able to reach for the second gambling match, and that's what he explained to Draupadi also. Now, coming back to the Dronacharya now. Dronacharya is a teacher, is a warfare school teacher, but again, he is fighting in the Mahabharat war. Now, again, he is being employed for his skills. Again, the Varna concept comes before the caste concept. Now, caste, if you look at the European history, even today as we speak, the nobility in Europe has more rights than the commoners. And you will not see people worshippers more anywhere else than Europe. Even today, the Queen is the Queen of England. Even today, the King of France is still there is a king, even though monarchy is established, but there is a royal family in France. There's a royal family in Belgium, in Netherlands, in Germany, Franco-Germanic tribes. And also there is a king of Rome, which is called the Pope. So now so this is still the royal order. And if you go there, you will see all of them eating or using utensils made of gold, which they have stolen from other countries. And they are still using silverware reserved for them, which is also stolen from other countries. Their governments are rich, their roads are good because it is also stolen from other countries. There is you go through any of those countries, most of these royal families don't pass through regular immigration laws also, even today. It doesn't matter whether they are kings or not the kings, it doesn't matter. And these are the same royal families still holding the majority of stakes in the deep state. People do not know. Large companies, large corporations, American corporations have all the stakes in them. So when people complain about the discrimination in India, they have to live it in Europe and other places. But we have our Bollywood gangs and other gangs who do not see anything India or East Southeast Asia, but only talk about Europe, which is I don't find reason living in the West for so long. I've been to all those places, and I can tell you they are much less beautiful than what they are shown on paper. Uh, so coming to back to Dronacharya debate here, Dronacharya Dronacharya fought in the Mahabharat war, even though he was not according to he was a teacher. So again, it debunks the philosophy that the Brahman were considered or any other caste or inferior to Kshatriya class. What do you have to say on that?
So you make a very interesting point, Aditya ji, and nobody ever said Dronacharya can't fight because he was a Brahmin. But there is one man who actually taunts him for being a Brahmin. And that one man is our man Karna, who is considered to be this epitome, this icon of anti-caste, anti-jati, this poor guy who's discriminated because of his jati.
That's right.
This is the guy who says in the Virat War, what happens is, so Duryodhan has convinced Dronacharya and Bhishma and everybody to come fight the Virat War under the pretext that Kichak is dead. So now they have to help this Susharma, who is the king of Trigarta, and basically defeat Virat. They haven't told them, Duryodhan hadn't told Bhishma or Dronacharya that he was actually attacking because he thought Pandavas were staying there in Agyatva. So he hadn't told them that. Anyway, so when they come for the war and they see this eunuch, they see Brihannala, and all these omens are around. And then looking at Brihannala from far away itself, Dronacharya thinks that this seems to be Arjun. And he says that if it is Arjun and he's going to be so angry after all these years, then it's going to be very difficult to fight him. And the omens around. So, at that time, you see this in Mahabharata and Ramayana quite sometimes, that people look at the nature around and they could figure whether it is a good sign or a bad sign. Or what does it indicate? Does it indicate victory or indicates loss or stuff like that? So Dronacharya says the omens are not right. Anyways, we have come here to fight Virat, and this seems like something else, and that clearly seems like Arjun. So I don't think this is the right time to fight. So Dronacharya was only making his concern known. There was nothing else to it. But what does Karna do? Karna jumps in, because Karna always wants to fight, right? So he jumps in and he says, he tells Duryodhan that see what your guru is doing. He's trying to demotivate the entire army. You don't worry, I am there. Anyways, Brahmins like him, teachers like him, are meant to do what? Katha Vichitra Kurvana. They are only meant to they were meant to discuss or do all this Katha Vachakgiri. Yeah, they are meant to go and teach good, interesting stories, narrate interesting stories. They are not meant to fight because they are cowards. They are not meant to fight. So the only person who has said this ever in the entire Mahabharata, that Dronacharya cannot fight, or he's a coward, or he's a Brahman who can only be doing kathas or saying kathas, is only Karna. Nobody else has said that. Anyways, eventually there was this all to and fro and some discussions happening, and Ashwathama became very angry, and Kripacharya said something, and Akarna said something. Eventually, Bhishma and Duryodhan had to step in and apologize to everybody else on behalf of Karna so that they could then fight again. So that is one. The other thing, this episode comes from Shanti Parva. So Yudhishthir is very upset that he had to fight his guru. He had to fight his grandfathers and brothers and sisters and all of that. And of course they won, but he had to do all of this. So he's very ashamed to meet Bhishma, who's lying on the bed of arrows. So at that time, Krishna tells Bhishma that Yudhishthira has come, but he's very scared. He's very embarrassed to meet you. And Bhishma tells him, Bhishma says, see, you remember one thing. Even if your guru does something which is adharmic, you have to definitely punish that guru as well, because dharma matters the most. So this is one thing he said. And the second thing he said is that irrespective of whatever varna or whatever it is, anyone who comes in the battlefield equipped to fight must be fought with like a kshatriya. Then there is no exception to be done. When a person is fighting on the battlefield, his varna is to be considered. I mean, not that his varna changes, so to say, but he's considered to be a warrior, and you must fight against that person, whoever that person is. Yeah. So again, that understanding is also very clear in the minds of all these people, that eventually it is about what you did, that your varna, your prominent varna was. Yeah. So yeah, so nobody really said Dronacharya couldn't fight except Karna. And it was, and nobody even minded it. It was very clear that he's teaching warfare in the first place to begin with, and he fought.
And again, the Karna's boastful tirade against Dronacharya also comes in. So
Yeah.
Kali Yuga is generally known as the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. So here we see the hypocrisy of many people, most of the so-called scholars, and I'm just a student, and I mean, you're also a student. So we are just students here. We don't claim to be scholar, because scholar itself has become a negative word.
Oh my god. Yeah. Actually, Aditya, not just Dronacharya, right? Kripacharya is also the same.
Yeah.
Kripacharya is also a Brahmin, and Kripacharya also taught warfare as well as he fought the war. In fact, to Kripacharya also, once Karna becomes so angry. Now, see, all these are gurus for Kauravas Pandavas, right? He becomes so angry and he says that if Kripacharya says one more word to me, and what was Kripacharya saying? Kripacharya was basically saying that you keep boasting all the time, but when there is this chance in front of you to prove yourself, you always fail. Gandharva war, you ran away and stuff like that. And these all people were angry because it was Karna who did not allow negotiations to happen at all. Yeah. So even there, Karna says that if you say one more word, if Kripacharya says one more word, I will pull out his tongue, his jihva, that I'll pull out. So even that is the kind of respect he had even for gurus. Yeah. So another thing, nobody else has said this also to Kripacharya ever. And the same goes for Ashwatthama. He's also Brahmin and he's also fighting like a warrior. So treated like a warrior, like anybody else.
Coming back to Dronacharya was a teacher of warfare and also niti, policies, and Yudhishthir Maharaj is very grateful to him throughout the war. In fact, he comes out, and before the war is starting, he starts walking without any weapons, no bodyguards, to take
Yes.
blessings. And Bhishma gives him blessings, and he was very happy with him for doing that. But in the case of Draupadi, second gambling match, when the shameful incident happened of affecting her pride to large extent. So that time Dronacharya is silent, and there is very interesting observation over there, and where Dronacharya says that he looks to Bhishma. So again, Bhishma was all of their superior.
Yes.
So what do you like to say on his reaction to what Duryodhana was doing?
I think the problem is this, right? Both Dronacharya and Bhishma, what did they consider themselves to be with respect to Hastinapur or in regards to Dhritarashtra? I think that's where the eventual thing is. If Bhishma considered himself only to be an employee who was tied to the kingdom, Dronacharya was the employee, right? So if Bhishma is not saying anything, Dronacharya probably thought he had no right to, because although he was the guru of everybody else, he was also the employee of the kingdom. So, they say ki namak khaya hai. So he had eaten the namak of Dhritarashtra. So, I mean, that's the thing, right? I don't really know what to talk about Dronacharya there, because the bigger silence there was of Bhishma himself. If Bhishma, being the patriarch of the family, couldn't say much, I'm sure Dronacharya wouldn't have, because Dronacharya was only an employee who was employed by Bhishma, right? So should he not have? I don't know. He could have. Vidur did. Vikarna did. But yeah, I think I wouldn't put the blame directly on him at all there.
Yeah, people blame that Pandavas used guile to kill him. Ashwatthama is killed. Ashwatthama was the elephant which was killed, and then he became weak. Again, Putra Moho. Again, the Dhritarashtra quality. Now it is very natural for people to have loving affection towards their son or daughter. It's very common, but here the situation was something else, and some people say that Yudhishthir's wrath came down because of speaking this incorrect lie. And some people say that Yudhishthir actually killed him by a guile or a something which he should not done have towards his teachers. What do you have to say on that?
Why was the guile used? Let's go back to what happened on the days before that death of Dronacharya, right? On the 13th day. So, by the way, once Bhishma was fallen, while he was on the bed of arrows, after Dronacharya became the Senapati of the Kauravas, basically all the rules set by Bhishma were thrown away. Yeah, the war became even more deadly, which is fine. Okay, hota hai. But then when we talk of guile, let's see what happened before that. Dronacharya had said, so what Duryodhan convinced Dronacharya is that you don't kill Yudhishthir, you only capture Yudhishthir. Because if once Yudhishthir is captured alive, we will again play the game of dice with him and again send him to Vanvas for 13 years and we don't have to worry. So Dronacharya agrees. Dronacharya says, I'll do that, but what you have to do is keep Arjun away. Because as long as Arjun is here, there is no chance I can capture Yudhishthir. So you keep Arjun away. First, 11th day, the first day of Dronacharya's Senapati, nothing happens. Second day, nothing happens. Third day, Chakravyu is made because Arjun has been led far away and Chakravyu is done. None of them knew that Abhimanyu knew how to enter because otherwise Yudhishthir would have entered and he would have been captured. But anyways, so Abhimanyu enters. Dronacharya was the guru of Arjun. Dronacharya was the guru of Kauravas, Pandavas, everybody. He was one of the 6 warriors who played a role in killing Abhimanyu. When Abhimanyu was a Nihatta, when he was weaponless, single young boy, he was not even on his chariot. Did he himself not break a rule? If you do that what Dronacharya did, given his stature, was I think even more a kalankari, is a bigger stigma on Dronacharya's personality. That is one. The other thing is, even this episode of Narova Kunjarova is very interesting. It's not as if Dronacharya drops his weapons immediately. That doesn't happen. So the incident as given in Mahabharata is what I'd like to narrate now. What had happened is, after Abhimanyu's death, the Jayadratha episode happened. Now, in Jayadratha episode, Arjun killed Jayadratha in spite of the entire Kaurav army protecting only one man. Everybody was trying to protect Jayadratha and only Jayadratha. He calls names to Dronacharya as well. So now Dronacharya wants to prove his loyalty to Duryodhan, and the next day he goes on a rampage. He kills as many people as he can, vagere, vagere. Then this thing happens of Brahmastra. He tries to use the Brahmastra as well. Thankfully, at that time, some intuition comes to him and they say that, okay, don't do that. So he doesn't use the Brahmastra. But anyways, at that time, Krishna suggests that we need to get Dronacharya to drop his weapon somehow. And this is what Dronacharya had told Yudhishthira on the very first day as well. So if you can somehow get me to drop my weapons, you can kill me. Till I have the weapons in my hand, you can't do anything to me. So then Krishna says, you say that Ashwathama is dead. Also, to make this statement true, Bhishma kills an elephant Ashwathama. And then in some versions, Yudhishthira says Ashwathama is dead, Narova Kunjarova, because Bhim had already said it, but Dronacharya wouldn't agree. He wanted Yudhishthira to confirm. So Yudhishthira confirms, he says, but Narova Kunjarova, which Dronacharya does not listen. However, even after that, Dronacharya continues to fight. After that, Bhim goes closer to Dronacharya again and says, your son is dead. What are you fighting for now? At that point, actually, Dronacharya drops his weapon. And then Drishtadyumna kills him. And that was an eventuality, right? Drishtadyumna was born to kill him. So, was it guile in some way? Probably. But that was a time when no rules were being followed anyways. So, in that sense, Yudhishthir was only being very, very practical, because we have to see another thing here. Yudhishthir was a king. His responsibility was towards his own army as well. He couldn't have just allowed his own people to die just like that, because Dronacharya wanted to prove a point to Yudhishthir, to Duryodhan, that he was loyal, right? So as a king, he must do what he must do to protect his people, and he did that. It was very pragmatic. So I actually don't even think of it as a guide in that sense, from a
Absolutely.
Raj Dharma perspective.
Yeah, from the Raj Dharma is very clear. And if you look at the what he was silent on many areas also, Dronacharya, and also the Dronacharya was a warrior which would have ensured Kauravas victory.
Correct?
Everybody knew that it was impossible for Pandavas to win the war because of Dronacharya and Bhishma. These two were the main
Correct.
people.
Correct.
Kripacharya was in any way Avadhya because he was a Brahman. So the again the concept comes in the loyalty due to salaries and due to employment. That was the main concern. And people also argue that the Yudhishthir could have employed Dronacharya and also made him his part of it. That was the only concern. He had more money in any way. But again, people forget that his loyalty was towards the throne of Hastinapur. That was the agreement between him
Correct.
and Bhishma. You know, so
Correct.
the truth, you can even find truth even in this aspect also, which nowadays you cannot see. Nowadays, the people shift jobs. There's a joke there. People change their undergarments, change jobs quicker than their undergarments. Okay, nowadays. So coming to the last point in this Eklavya and Dronacharya, the relationship between Dronacharya and Eklavya is already established, but the relationship between Eklavya and Kauravas is not established. What was their relationship?
Maybe I'm not sure about this. You have to give me some more hint.
Yeah,
Aditya
like
ji.
the Eklavya, how was he loyal to the Kauravas' cause, and why was he fighting for Jarasandh, or what? Why was his loyalty in that direction?
Okay, so from what I know of this, I don't think it is so much as even Kauravas. It was basically Jarasandh. And Jarasandh was considered to be the enemy of Dwarka, and everybody else was the friend of Dwarka. And not just of that, right? He had captured all these 100 kings, so that he had to do this yagna and become even more powerful. I think that was it. So actually, not just Ekalavya, Shishupal and other kings who were directly related to Yadavs and Pandavas and all of that, they were also very loyal to Jarasandh, because Jarasandh was one of the strongest kings at that time. Uh, when the Rajsuya Yagna was to happen, Krishna, and everybody says that, oh, Yudhishthir, go, you must definitely do this Yagna. Whatever, you are really powerful now, you have money and everything. You have brothers who can do this, who are capable of defeating the entire Bharatvarsha. So at that time, Yudhishthir asked Krishna that, is this the right time? Should I go ahead and do the Rajsuya Yagna? So Krishna says, yes, you are capable of doing it, but there is one hurdle in your path. And that hurdle is Jarasandh. Because Jarasandh is so powerful, he's the most powerful king today. If you have a direct war with Jarasandh, all the other kings, including Shishupal, Eklavya, all of that, they will all be behind Jarasandh, because they are all his friends. They all have eaten his namak, or whatever is the way to call it, and they will fight against you. So there is no way you can defeat Jarasandh in a one-to-one war. You will have to defeat him very strategically. And that is when he takes Bhim and Arjun and goes, and there is a Malla Yuddha between Bhim and Jarasandh is killed. Yeah. So in a way, Jarasandh is not directly working for Kaurava's cause as he's working for Jarasandh's cause. The only difference here, though, is that eventually Jarasandh and Krishna are like Dwarka, Yadavs of Dwarka are like enemies, and enemies become friends. So I think it's something of this sort, as I understand. I probably am not completely aware of the direct connection of Kauravs and Ekalavya in that sense. My connection, what I know, is mainly the Jarasandh Ekalavya connection.
You're right, actually, because the connection is not direct, is through Jarasandh. And also the Jarasandh's armies were the most, in fact, Krishna says 25% of the earth's landmass.
Yes.
That was the power of Jarasandh. So I think we have effectively countered all these questions on all aspects, including the Dalit card people nowadays attach. The word Dalit is not even in Manusmriti. It is a later creation. And
Yeah.
also the
You
caste
know,
angle is not there.
Mahatma Phule created that word. Yeah.
Dalit is a much later word, isn't it? And then, and also the all the modern hypocritical talks on all these different characters go on. You must read Emmy's book, Mahabharat Unraveled, and you can also check out my books, which is on Yudhishthir, the Greatest Samrat, where I've connected all these different points here. And also the third part is the Narada's faith in the Pandavas was more than anyone else, even in the Kaurava side, even though he also wanted to stop the war. And we might do a next session that Krishna did not encourage the war. We might do that
So
also.
that's the most ridiculous thing to say, Aditya ji. Matlab, you know, we know entire Mahabharat, and to say eventually you're putting the blame on Krishna of all people. Yeah, like seriously, what's happened to our logical thinking?
No, they say
But
Kali
we will
Yuga.
talk about it. Yeah.
And also the one of the different things which we will come up with is that Krishna learned Bhagavad Gita from Parabrahman, which is another thing which I'm hearing now. where,
Okay.
where, well, if you read Bhagavad Gita, you will find out Krishna says, I'm the source of Brahman.
So,
And Arjun says, you are Parabrahman. So,
yeah.
right there, you have direct references, two shlokas. And there are many other places also. And also, you can read Bhagavad Puran, you'll get a lot of references like that. So, thank you so much, Amy, for coming on the show. And we discussed very openly. And let us know what you feel, all the viewers who are watching and people who are on live. I know it's a new topic for most of you, but you'll slowly understand what goes on in India shortly. Okay. Namaste. Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you.